All right, following the fight with TDSIN, I wanted to clarify some things on EWAR. So I figured the easiest way to do that would be to put together a video on capacitor warfare and just a little bit on EWAR in general. So the best way to do that is to go through the footage of it from like a Balgorn's point of view. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm hardly the expert on this, but I've been trying. So I'm gonna see if I can maybe pass along some of my findings and things I've picked up along the way to you guys, so we can all be more cognizant of what's going on within fleet, or maybe even some of you just decide to step up and into those roles, just to kind of diversify your skill set. Without further ado, let's get to the battle. All right, just so you're all aware of what's going on here, I have on the big screen here is my Balgorn, my primary, my main. Down in the lower left-hand corner, covering the chat there, is my alt and a Scorpion. Did not really intend to bring him originally, but I just threw him in a squirt just for shits and giggles, and in the end I'm really glad I did, because the combination of newts and jams is much more valuable than newts or jams. We're just starting off here. You know, TDSIN has finally made their way into the hole. We're a good bit of the way through the timer. And I am landed with the fleet, and slow ass fucking Balgorn, of course, lagging behind. But as you can see, I wind up putting my micro warp drive on and kind of trying to catch up in the end there. One of our friends got caught in a Geddon a ways off, and he did not last but a second. And I've seen that many times so far with newt boats, and that's kind of lesson number one, is stay with the fucking fleet. Also, I want to apologize right now for my erratic, nauseating camera movements. I don't know why. It's like a nervous tick in the middle of a battle. I'm just spinning everywhere. It's just what I do. I'm sorry. But bear with me. So, TDSIN's fleet lands, and the first order of business isn't necessarily their logi all the time. I locked up these two Geddons because they landed pretty quick. They landed almost before their logi did, and also they were at the top of my list. But really, you know, we don't need to worry about fucking with enemy logi until we've made sure our own logi is all right. So we kind of need to focus other newt boats in that regard. Now, I wound up getting rid of them because I noticed they were fucking 70 kilometers off, and I just went straight for locking up Guardians then. Wasn't sure if we'd wind up closing range. Now, on my other screen, I'm also locking shit up with my Scorpion, doing the best I can there, which actually is within range at that point. Another big thing, which I wound up going back to do after this whole battle, is I wound up making just an EWAR tab, because I was having a mindfuck trying to figure out between, you know, there were so many Guardians on the field, actually more than I could lock, at varying ranges, trying to figure out, okay, what the fuck is in range, what is in range that I should be neuting, and at what range are they? So you can see I'm kind of frantic when it comes to that. Now at this point, I've realized that there's no Guardians in range. There's no other Balgorns, enemy Balgorns or Armageddons in range. So I'm starting to look at what can I do. And unfortunately, at this point, what I've seen happen, and I myself have done more than once, is a lot of Balgorn pilots or EWAR pilots will be like, fucking charge! And just, you know, micro warp drive on right into the enemy fleet. Like, I have to do my thing. I have to get in range. Shut up, James. Every time that happens, they die. I swear to God, every time it happens. So I say it again, stay with the fleet. You need to stay within your own range of your own Logi. And remember that enemy Logi is at range as well. So they might not be within their optimal to begin with. So instead, I identified other targets that I could do work on at that point in time. That might sometimes just be Newton out DPS. In this case, I saw a bunch of damnations. I know that Newts can turn off bursts, and bursts can really make the difference in a battle. I mean, we're talking about plus 30% reps, plus 30% armor. If I could manage to maybe knock some of those off right away, that might make a difference as we start getting settled in and getting our ranges figured out. All right, so at this point I have come to terms with the fact that I'm not going to be leading the charge. I've fallen behind the fleet. That was my bad, but it kind of worked out in the end. You see me turn my micro warp drive on. I'm going forward, trying to close range. These guards are starting to get close to my range. My other screen, I'm doing the best work I can getting jams off on the squirp. I'm overheating those jams, and they're actually landing. I was really surprised. They must have not been receboed or sensor boosted very well. I'm starting to take hits because the enemy FC is like, hey, EWAR is a terrible thing for our Logi, and we need to stay on grid. And I start off right away with like a huge, just one cycle across the board on one Guardian there. I found that the name of the game is stagger your newts, because you don't want them to all cycle at the same time, because in between that cycle time they could normally regen. But I found that when you first get in the battle, you want to knock like one guard just fucking down. Like he should just be capped out. And that kind of really goes a long way in breaking that cap chain. And again, jams are cycling on the other. After I do that, I immediately switch most of my newts off of that first one I primaried, leaving just some nosses on him because they have a faster cycle time. I want to keep him completely capped out. And if I can move my 3 or 4 newts over to the next guard, that could also potentially be enough to break him. And then, you know, it's kind of I'm just hoping for a fail skate after that. Doesn't usually go that well, but that's my line of thinking behind. You see these just immediate cycles across the board instead of staggering them all. I do stagger newts, and you do want to stagger newts once you kind of settle in and they realize that there's capacitor warfare going on across the board, and they're going to start to just, you know, no matter what, they're going to get cycles off. The Guardians just regen too much cap, and you do not cycle fast enough. So in between you trying to land cycles of cap warfare, they're regenerating, they're getting reps off, they're getting cycles of their remote cap transfers off. So also, I'm not the only newt boat on field. Oisom is there, and another Balgorn. I don't know if he got popped yet. He got popped pretty early, unfortunately, but we also had 2 Geddons with us too. One we lost right off the bat. So the idea is, and we had a little channel going. I don't remember how much we got to talk in it because it was fucking wild. But what I like to do, what I found to be more effective, is if you got multiple newt boats, it shouldn't be like one newt boat, one target. It should be spread all your newts all out across your targets, especially if you've got jams in the mix, which I did, which I had the Scorpion doing jams, and it's tough to see in this much smaller screen, but my alt was doing work with those. Honestly, I hadn't had high hopes for him, but he was doing work with those jams. And I think you can see right off the bat, you can kind of see some of the zeros pop up, or the +1 gigajoules pop up, where we're starting to break a cap chain a little bit, and they're only repping through sheer volume. Keep in mind too that we were on grid with a Citadel, so I don't know how that Citadel was fit. There were probably jams and newts on the Raitaru. I think the Raitaru has a newt bonus. I don't know. So you guys are probably going to correct the living hell out of me on most of this stuff anyway. But that's where we're at right now. All right, and I want to kind of do an aside here right now, because I want to talk about capacitor. Stan kind of turned me on to this while I was arguing with him about something. And he was just talking about how cap actually regens, and I hadn't ever been privy to that knowledge. And I wound up going on to EWUNI website, and I'll bring it up right now. EWUNI capacitor warfare, so I can talk about it. That sounded like an idiot, maybe. But the short of it is that a capacitor in EVE on any ship doesn't regen in a linear fashion. Like, it's not like we look at our fitting windows and we see capacitor regen over 13 gigajoules over 1 second or whatever. That's just an average of what we're doing, but that isn't how it actually regens. It doesn't regen 13 gigajoules every second. It winds up in that your first, it's a nonlinear curve, so it's actually kind of like a, let me see if I can bring this up real quick. So apparently somebody crunched the numbers and they figured out the exact recharge rate for ships in EVE. And what we learned from this is that when a ship is below 25% of its total cap capacity, that's when it's really susceptible to getting capped out again. Because the recharge rate from 0 to 25% is significantly less than from 25 to 75%. And then again, it drops off. You can see that it's pretty self-evident from this blue curve right here. So I hope that makes sense when I'm talking about newt cycles and things like that. So back to the battle. I've capped down, like really tried to cap down a couple Logi to take them from that 75, 100% down below 25, so that hopefully maybe only 1 or 2 nosses or newts is enough to keep them below that 25% mark and to keep them in that vicious cycle of not having a hell of a lot of cap. Also, don't forget, you got a drone bay on a Balgorn. You got a drone bay on most of these battleships that you're using. So I loaded in some medium EC 600s, and I've got them on one of the counter EWAR, which was a Geddon. A lot of times, Balgorns and Armageddons are super susceptible to jams if they haven't fitted them with Recibos. That's why I have a Recibo on mine. Just a quick aside on that Recibo or that Cibo thing. I unloaded my ECCM script because I wasn't getting jammed. But there were so many targets on field that I felt the need to actually target ships a little quicker. So I believe this is about the point where things really start going south. We had been doing the best we could, but we just started to lose too many Logi and too much DPS. We got one of the enemy Balgorns off. It's a battleship, and you flying one need to be cognizant of the fact that, just got jammed here because I unloaded that damn ECCM script. Maybe not the smartest move on my part, but I was trying. Yeah, look at me, reloading that. Yep, big mistake. Woo! But you are a battleship. You're going to take harder hits than pretty much anything else on field. So when you get primaried, that's what's going to happen. That's why I went through my Balgorn fit again, and I wound up with a triple-plated fit. You want as much buffer as you can, and you need to stay within your own Logi's optimal range. All things you need to consider. Now we're kind of in the death throes here. I'm just frantically looking at what I can do at this point. I'm just cycle my newts to the last man. I put the burst jammer on there. Fuck you, Pim. You see the DPS drop off for about 3 or 4 seconds there until I finally bop. I'll talk about later why I do that. And then I am frantically burning out of the bubble because I'm in a talisman pod. Let me talk about that real quick. So, I know some of you guys are probably hurting after that battle, losing a couple of ships. But normally we do pretty good on ISK. You know, we run our site nights and all that shit. So don't be afraid to buy some shit for your pods. I was running a talisman clone, and my mid-grade talisman clone. I bought a mid-grade talisman set. Let's bring up Z-Kill real quick. And with the Omega, and I gotta go to mine, and I put in a 5% reduction, one of the Squire 5% reductions in use for Capacitor for Cap Warfare modules. So that's 5, 6, 7 implants, and the pod came out to 360 mil. But the pod itself, the rate at which it newts and it reps and those cycles land is just significantly enhanced. So I mean, you're already flying a 600 or 700 mil battleship. It's worth doing, even if you're going to lose it. But again, that's why I fly the mid-grades. You know, it's not ridiculously expensive. If I had not had that 5% reduction in cap need, I want to say that alone was 100 mil. That was 160 mil. Probably not the most frugal thing to put in there. So it would have been even less than that. It would have been, you know, a 200 mil pod for you know, bringing your newt cycles down 1 or 2 full seconds, which really would make the difference when trying to cap out Logi. So definitely something to consider. If you've been looking at my inventory, you see I completely forget to take my drugs. I pretty much always do. I tell myself I'm not going to, and somehow I always do. Because I'm a wormhole pro, like the rest of DSYN. So I had an improved Mind Flood in there. The Mind Flood has no detriments that would affect the Balgorn. Everything is related to turrets and shit like that. Doesn't fucking matter. So you can go buy your fanciest Mind Flood you want and get a big fat cap bonus. I bring this up in addition to the fact that there's a cap booster on the Balgorn, and the whole hole is full of cap boosters, because no matter any smart FC is going to counter a newt boat. They're susceptible to newts. They're using cap to newt. And unless you're running an all NOS Balgorn, which is a thing, and it's a pretty cool thing, but it's really niche. But when it works, it works. But any FC is gonna say, hey, mainline DPS, throw your newts on the Balgorn, throw your newts on the newt boat, because that's probably enough to make his day hell. But if you've got this 200 mil pod that is giving you a bonus, reducing your overall need by, you know, 2%, 3%, those implants are really cheap compared to the 5% I was running. And a plus fucking 30% from the Mind Flood. Spend the money on that maybe, or anything else, the anti-pharmacons even, which are cheaper a little bit. That's a hell of a thing. And that can make all the difference in how long you can stay in play before you get newted out. Because counter newts are bad. That also being said, don't forget you have drones, and during this fight, I was using my Scorpion to occasionally jam out other nuke boats, which really came in handy. So I'm sorry, I got blown up at this point. I'm trying to get out. I get potted out to Judah, and now I've got my squirt. You see it down there in the lower left-hand corner. Takes me a couple seconds to realize that I should probably bring that over to my main screen. So go ahead and squint and see what you can see as far as that goes. But I am jamming like a madman. We're trying to exfil. It's the Scorpion, you know, man. It's a 180 mil battleship. It was well worth every penny in that fight, and I would gladly ride that thing to ground. I highly recommend getting yourself or your alts up to Caldari Battleship level 4 and getting your, at a minimum of 4, and getting your jam skills done up. Because the Scorpion, it's not the most survivable ship, but it's cheap and it does work. So I've actually found for some reason it's almost a little bit better in larger brawls than it is in small gang. Because you use your range this whole time. All I did was anchor to Logi. And Logi, all I did was anchor to Logi. I was trying to focus my nuke boat as much as I could to do work there, and I would just cycle my nukes. Cycle my jams. Get jams off on things. If I found I wasn't getting jams on something, drop lock on that, pick a new Guardian. And that is the kind of chaos that, in addition to, you know, 2 Balgorns, or I think all we had at that point was a Balgorn again. Oh yeah, I just realized main screen. Yeah, there we go. That can really make the difference. And we did ultimately pop a few of our enemies there, quite a few. That was hardly. I mean, we lost, but I mean they took it on the nose too. Like they felt it. I am just about out of. Oh, I'm completely out of cap boosters here. Cap starts to become a problem because Scorpion's getting capped out. And I also didn't take my drugs on my alt either. Yeah, go figure. But that's about all she wrote for that. I've had enough glasses of bourbon where I'm not sure I'm making any sense now. And fuck you, Matrim. I put an ice cube in my glass of bourbon. It's Woodford Reserve too. Yeah, how you feel about that? Anyway. I hope that you guys got something out of this. My goal was to just pass along my findings from this battle and from this whole experience. I've been trying to run nuke boats as much as I could. They're fun, jams to a lesser extent, but EWAR overall has been amazing, and I feel like I have a handle on it to a certain degree, and I want to kind of advocate for other DSYN pilots who maybe have just been flying just that. Oh, here I'm going down. Just that, you know, I don't want to say F1 monkey because that definitely doesn't describe us, but have been mostly filling that DPS niche. If you want to sit in that Geddon, you and your alt in a Geddon, or sit in that Balgorn or whatever, please talk to me some more too, and we'll practice, and you know, we'll get you sorted, and you should do it, because it always makes the difference in the outcome of battle, including this one. So thank you for your time, guys, and as always, see you in the chain and kill shit.